Terry, this is Maurice Carthon from the Kansas City Chiefs. How you doing? You ready for us to pick you?
Turning in, Terry Poe, nose tackle, Memphis State.
Good job.
Don Terry. Coach Cornell, how are you doing? Hey, congratulations, guys. Now, you're going to be able to come in here and you're going to give you a great chance to compete. And I'm looking for you to play on all downs, all right? Okay, buddy. I know you're excited and there's people there, so I'm going to let you talk to Mr. Hunt. He's on.
Don Terry, how are you doing? Good. You excited to be a Kansas City Chief? Well, we're excited. You're going to love living in Kansas City and playing for the Chiefs.
All this political talk.
Coach Cornell and our entire defensive staff. It's just like working with you, and you're going to enjoy working with them. Well, good. Well, I just wanted you to know how excited we are to have you. And I'm going to let you talk to our general manager, Scott Peely. Just
make sure someone says they're
Oh. How you doing, kid? Good. I'm doing great. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers as it's post-draft today on Chiefs Live. Great show for you in store. Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, will join us in studio, and he will break down each and every one of the Chiefs draft picks. We'll talk about where those guys might fit on Kansas City's roster. We'll also have Adam Kaplan of NFL Sirius Radio join the show. We talked to him last at the NFL Combine, not only about the draft, but also about the Chiefs' needs heading into free agency. Well, guess what? It's that second wave, that last wave of free agency that's going to happen here over the next few weeks and into the summer for the Chiefs. The Chiefs still have some post-draft needs. They've been on the phone with veterans. They've got a 90-man training camp roster to fill. So there'll still be some veterans that are added to this roster in the next few weeks that can help the Chiefs in the 2012 season. So we'll look at some of the guys available with Adam and also who can fit possibly in that 3-4 Kansas City Chiefs defense or maybe offensively for the Chiefs. The best available in free agency now that the draft is over, now that the first wave of free agency is over. The Chiefs still have a little bit of work to do at a few positions. We'll take a look at those later in the show. And, of course, why don't we kick it off right now? Last week was all mock draft all the time. Let's see how my mock draft did. In one word, fail. It was a failed mock draft. However, if you look a little bit deeper into this, everything we've been talking about on this show leading up to the draft, the Chiefs need a position. Where the Chiefs might go at certain positions, I think held true even in this mock draft. Obviously, we had David DeCastro, like many of you, going to the Chiefs at number 11. Our big debate around DeCastro was, is 11 too high to take an offensive guard? Ultimately, it was. Yes, that was the answer. He goes in the 20s to Pittsburgh in the first round. As many teams passed on David DeCastro. Of course, Mitch Holthus and I thought the Chiefs might be in the business of moving down, trading down, and picking DeCastro up later. 2 trade opportunities were on the board for the Chiefs. They passed on both to make sure they were able to get Dontari Poe, their guy. Noteworthy to the Chiefs, in the second round they got who is thought to be one of the thought to be by many as the best guard prospect on the board. He was a tackle in college behind David DeCastro and Jeff Allen out of Illinois. So the Chiefs address that interior offensive line need early after they go nose tackle. The rest will go through real quick. Mitchell Schwartz. You remember last week we were debating, we would put Schwartz there or Donald Stevenson there. We knew the Chiefs liked Donald Stevenson from their rookie day, their rookie pro day they had here, where 17 local guys came in. The Blue Springs High School grad ends up going to the Chiefs in the 3rd round. So we were debating between Schwartz and Stevenson, and ended up being Stevenson. Schwartz actually kicked off the run of offensive tackles in the 2nd round when he went to the Cleveland Browns. Josh Chapman, obviously there was not a need at nose tackle behind here. What did we talk about last week on the show, though, was if the Chiefs did not draft a nose tackle in rounds 1 or 2, and a lot of people had Alameda Ta'amu to the Chiefs in round 2. Ta'amu fell all the way into the 3rd day of the NFL draft. We debated, would Josh Chapman be there in round 4, and it shows you there's a bit of a fall off past the Michael Brockers, Dontari Poe, Fletcher Cox. Is Josh Chapman, a guy who a lot of Chiefs fans liked, didn't even go in the 4th. He was there and available in the 5th round. This is where things get going a little bit south for us. Audie Cole we had going in the 5th. He ends up going in the 7th. The Chiefs don't take a linebacker at all. That's one of our biggest positions of need heading into our post-draft coverage here on KCChiefs.com. We had it pegged on in the 6th round, taking an all-purpose back. We had Michael Smith of Utah State. It ended up being Cyrus Gray of Texas A&M. One in the same mold. Same thing with the 7th round. The Chiefs go with a 5-tech defensive end. We mocked Dominique Hamilton of the Missouri Tigers. He ends up going undrafted and signing with the Oakland Raiders. Jerome Long ends up being the pick for the Chiefs out of San Diego State, a 5-tech defensive end. And then really the big surprise of our mock, and the big fail of our mock, and really the surprise, though, of NFL Network, if you watch the draft live, T.J. Graham, the speedy wide receiver out of NC State, who's a very raw route runner, but is a guy who can flat out fly, ends up going all the way in the 3rd round to the Buffalo Bills. Mike Mayock was shocked when this happened. I was shocked. I said, the mock draft's ruined when T.J. Graham goes 4 rounds earlier than we mocked. It's a good thing to note, though. Each and every year, there's a wide receiver with track speed, world-class speed, that's going to go extremely higher than most people think, because speed in the NFL kills, and if you can take that raw talent and have that track speed, you can be a successful offense in the National Football League. So to make sure we have transparency, wanted to start the show with our failed mock draft, but as you look there in the positions of need, I think you see that the Chiefs did address many of the things we've been talking about on Chiefs Live for the weeks leading up to the draft. Mitch Holthus joined us yesterday here on set. Today he's speaking to a group of college students in Hays, Kansas at Fort Hays State University, but I wanted to get him on the show in the studio and break down each of the Chiefs picks one by one and see where they might fit into Kansas City's roster for 2012. Let's kick it off with Mitch here on Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. Voice of the Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, joins us on Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. Well, you get any sleep after a weekend of being walled up here at Arrowhead?
Yeah, it was a long weekend, but I was all about the 3rd day. I don't want to jump ahead to the 3rd day, but I kind of really do.
Well, let's jump ahead.
I was excited after the 3rd day, thinking the Chiefs might have the best 3rd day of any team in the league, or at least one of the best.
Well, I want to go pick by pick with you, so why don't we do it kind of like we did our mock draft last week, and you're like the 3rd day, so let's go in reverse order for the Chiefs and get your thoughts on each and every one of these prospects. Leading it off for the Chiefs, let's go with the man drafted in the bottom of the 7th round, Michigan wide receiver Junior Hemingway. What do you like about him, and how do you see him possibly trying to fit in and make this roster?
If you watch the videos, he is really big and strong to the outside on a numbers to boundary type situation. How many 7th rounders were MVP of a BCS bowl game? And he was great in that game. I kind of wondered why he was there in the 7th round. Don't know why, but love him and the fact that you talk about value. I think you get incredible value with this pick, and he is strong. On a 9-route or jump ball situation, seems like he came down with it more than ever, had some huge games for Michigan, exploded in some Big Ten games.
When you look at Hemingway, if he's going to make this roster, he's going to have to find his way onto special teams. You look at some of the guys that, if he makes it, he would be a 5th receiver. You would think one of those guys there down. So who are the guys there? You have veterans in Terrence Copper, special teams ace. Jeremy Horn, when he's on the roster, he's usually that 5th guy. He's a gunner. So if he's going to find his way in, he's going to need to show something to Coach McMahon and the new special teams staff. Is I can cover kicks too. I can block for you on your kickoff return. He as much as the receiver in him needs to show up. I think special teams is just as important for him.
I agree with you. And the fact that with his size and his position, normally that means gunner type guy or an outside either R1 or 2 or an L1 or 2 on kickoff coverage. That's what you want out of a guy that size in that position.
He's a guy, and she says we talk about, and this is talking a little bit forward, but once training camp comes, and Mitch, you do a feature I think on it every year, is the core 4 guys, and you kind of can get tipped off as to who is going to make this team at those skill positions based off of if they're running with the ones and on more than one special team when the preseason games come around. So a guy like Hemingway, keep that in mind as you look at him throughout this preseason that will be coming up really in just kind of around the corner, just a few months. If he's on the punt return, the kickoff return, chances are good for that guy to make this roster. The first of the Chiefs' 2 7th-round picks, Mitch, was a guy from San Diego State. He played nose tackle, D tackle for the Aztecs. Going to be a D-end here in Kansas City. Jerome Long, what can you tell us about Jerome?
Well, you always hear the word project, but he was productive now for San Diego State. He had an up-and-down career there, the team did. But this to me looks like one of those redshirt candidates, a guy that you put out there in camp, give him some reps, fourth quarter preseason games, but then you give him a shot at the practice squad and just let him develop. And then going into the 2013 season, you kind of get an idea of what you've got. But a guy that was on the field a lot for San Diego State, and again, you're not sure what you're going to get here, but a guy that's not void of talent.
I compare his roster situation a lot to the fact of Brandon Bears. Last year, Brandon Bears showed up in the preseason. He ended up making this team, the only undrafted player to make this team last season. Took the red shirt, was on the 53-man roster for all 16 games, did not appear in any games, did not take a single snap, but was developing. And Long, if he's going to make a team, will probably be a guy like Bear or a practice squad player in the same capacity.
And Bear's the Brandon Whedon of the defensive line because he is an older guy. But that's a great point, but that's where I see this guy slotted.
All right, let's get to the 6th round, the guy that you and I are both pumped about, and that's not from my Aggie bias. This is a guy I've liked for a while. He's tough. He's a leader. He can break your big plays, and what we talked about so many times on this show, Mitch, he fits the Chiefs' need at running back. You would talk Kevin Falk on this show. This guy can kind of be in that mold. Cyrus Gray, the 6th-round pick out of Texas A&M.
I tweeted this. First of all, I know we'll get to up to the Chiefs' 2nd-round pick, but I thought it was more than irony that Will Shields read that pick. I was wanting Kevin Falk of the Patriots to actually read this pick for the Chiefs because we did talk about it for almost a month that you need a 3rd down back. He can run screens, draws, pass block, when you've got 5.5-man protection or 6-man protection and your 6th guy's the back. And he can do that. I mean, we've got some video of him doing that at Texas A&M in the fact that I know he was an every down player for A&M. He put up some great numbers, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, all that. But to me, this guy looks like a prototype 3rd down back. And it's been the while for the Chiefs have had that guy, in my opinion, and to get him in the 6th round, I was as excited about this pick as maybe any in this draft class.
Again, special teams will be a factor for Gray. We talked about a guy at that 4th running back position needs to be able to play special teams and contribute there. I think Jackie Battle last season, even when he had his carry total go up, he was still covering kicks because you know Dexter McCluster isn't going to factor in teams much more than a return man. He's not going to cover kicks. Jamal Charles, his days of returning kicks are over. He's not going to play any special teams, and Peyton Hillis isn't a special teams player either. So if you're going to keep 4 running backs, that 4th guy has to be a teams guy. Gray has the build, and then obviously, as you spoke of, he has the help to catch passes out of the back for that all-purpose back and can do a number of things for the Chiefs as a specific role player.
Well, and again, like a kickoff coverage guy, one of those outside R1, 2, 3s, I could see Cyrus Gray doing that and embracing that role. I mean, he's a tough kid out of DeSoto, Texas. One thing that he proved for Texas A&M was he's a tough kid. He played through a lot of injuries last year. There were tons of expectations for him going into the season. I just think there's a lot of assets this guy brings to the franchise. 2
out of the last 3 years, the Chiefs have drafted Alabama's star, and the star is meant for a name they call a sub-package specialist on their defense when they go to their nickel and they go to their dime package. Of course, this player, Daquan Menzie, also started outside at cornerback opposite Dre Kirkpatrick, the 1st-round pick in this year's draft. Daquan Menzie, a guy that you like, a guy that I like. He replaced Javier Arenas as the star when Arenas was drafted in the 2nd round. by the Chiefs in 2010. This is a guy that Mike Mayock said on the live broadcast, he doesn't care where the Chiefs put him, he will compete for a starting position day one, is what Mike Mayock said about Daquan Menzie. Your thoughts on Menzie?
Well, he got lost in the Drake Kirkpatrick, Mark Barron talk because they captured most of the headlines, and based on where they were drafted, you can see why. But let's go back to the 4 shows that we did prior to the draft. Did we not say one of the needs for this team is to have a corner that could fit a safety mode in nickel or dime, or a safety that has cornerback skills? And if you look at Daquan Menzie, that's what you see. And I really like the fact that it gives Romeo Crennel an opportunity to use him as a star here as far as covering the slot receiver on those intermediate crossing patterns. He's good size, 6 foot. He's a big guy, physical. Plus, you can see him, he blitzes a lot. When he blitzes, good things happen. I just think with him and Javier Arenas and Jaleel Brown going to camp, you've got some guys behind the other guys that can do very, very good things. And again, we talk about Romeo being creative. He gets a chance to be creative with guys like Daquan Menzie. And to your special teams discussion, this guy's got to be a teams guy. And he's got to be not only a coverage guy, but also a guy that's going to be on your return game too. Not necessarily as the returner, but one of those up blockers to make your return game effective.
As far as the position that he walks into, he may play some safety too. He may be that nickel guy. But you talked on this show about how you kind of like the fact that if you can find a nickel guy that comes in, especially in your dime defense, you can move Javier Arenas, who's one of the best blitzing corners in college football when he came out and has shown the ability to be a good blitzing corner in the NFL. You can free up yourself to do some more blitzes with Arenas if you can get a guy who can cover out of that slot. And I like the competition now for sub-package defensive spots. Jaleel Brown, you mentioned him. Travis Daniels, you mentioned him. You can throw Donald Washington in there, Javier Arenas, and then you go and add Menzie to it. That's 5 guys. Not all those guys are going to make the football team. All of them have played significant reps at some point or another for the Chiefs over the last few seasons. And when you hear Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel talk about competition, that's a need. Patsy, hello, Peyton Manning, twice a year. You've got to have a solid sub-package group, and I think Menzie is really going to escalate not only the competition, but the skill level of that group of players competing as well.
And whoever emerges out of those battles in OTAs, mini camps, and St. Joe in the preseason games, and the Chiefs will play some combination coverage. That means sometimes some guys will be in zone and some are in man, some of those tricky coverages. But whether you're in straight man or you're in a combo coverage, at some point you've got to cover the shallow crosser and the deep crosser, particularly when teams go to 3 wide. And to me, Daquan Menzie looks like a guy that, I mean, you can even be in perfect position, but if physically you're a mismatch for whatever that inside receiver is, it's tough to make those plays. This guy looks like he'd be very difficult to have a mismatch against him.
Well, it's on this show that now makes Scott Pioli 4 for 4 in his drafts of picking up a corner. Donald Washington year 1, Javier Arenas year 2, Jaleel Brown year 3, and Daquan Menzie now in year 4, although we'll see exactly what his position is in the Chiefs secondary. He was a cornerback in college for the Crimson Tide. 4th round, the first pick of day 3 of the draft for the Chiefs. Another need, just keep checking off those needs we talked about on this show. Slot receiver. Mitch, how bad did the team need a slot receiver? I'll tell you how bad they needed a slot receiver. Last year when Jonathan Baldwin had the preseason thumb injury, Steve Breston had to play outside, and Breston has played outside a lot. People label him as a slot receiver. He's not just a slot receiver. In fact, he played outside with Arizona a lot as well. You had Kerry Colbert as your opening day slot receiver last year, and Colbert had a good camp, and hats off to him, but he was also out of football for 2 years coaching at USC. It showed you how thin that position was, how thin the Chiefs were at wide receiver after their first 3 options, Dwayne Bowe, Steve Breston, and Jonathan Baldwin. Now they not only fit with 2 receivers this draft, but they get the traditional slot guy. He gets the Wes Welker comparisons. He gets speed. He is a true slot in Devin Wiley.
This is a 4-3-5 slot who does a good job of running routes. He also has made big plays. If you look at 2 of the biggest plays he made in his career at Fresno State, a 67-yard punt return that was sick against Nebraska. The other big punt return he had for a touchdown in his career was against Boise State, 2 of the toughest teams that Fresno State played, and he made plays. It wasn't like everybody was getting blocked and there's 10 guys getting pancaked and he just jogs into the end zone. He made plays. Listen, this is going to be one thing you and I are going to talk about in the next several weeks on this show, because I think wide receiver becomes under the microscope for a variety of reasons. And we know with Dwayne Bowe not signing his tender to this point, we can talk about a lot of things. And people say, well, in OTAs, you can't get a whole lot done because it's running around in shorts. Or mini camps, you aren't in pads. Well, that might be the case for the linemen. They got to do a lot of classroom work and technique work. But for the wide receivers and the quarterbacks on this team, it's on right now. Because I think if Matt Castle was here, he would tell you one of the biggest things out of this position in 2012 to be effective is precision. Can you have a deep threat? Can you have the shallow crosser we talked about, the intermediate routes? Being precise. I don't care if it's Dwayne Bowe, Steve Breston, Baldwin, Wiley, whomever else is going to put out there, Mark Salz, and anybody that's got a shot, they've got to be precise. When you watch Devin Wiley and you see him as a slot receiver, you see elements of that precision. If you get a guy that can run a shallow cross, it just goes back to the discussion we had about Menzie. If you get a guy to run that route who also has a chance to get upfield and be explosive, not just a 6-yard gain, but have the speed at 4.35 to make it a 50-yard gain, all of a sudden now it makes your outside guys get a lot of single coverage. And if you've got a tight end that has pass-catching skills, which we know Moeaki does, as does Kevin Boss, it opens up many times in the middle of that field.
You're talking about the big plays he could bring offensively. Hopefully that comes. But also in special teams, the Chiefs by no means had a poor punt return game last year. They were ranked number 5 in the league. Javier Arenas, I believe, was ranked in the top 3 in the league. But while Arenas was consistently good, consistently in the upper half of this league and in the top part of this league, the Chiefs have not had a punt return or a kick return touchdown since Monday Night Football.
McCluster's 94-yarder. And look at the NFL stats. If somebody wants to Google this, they can. Look at the top 6 punt returning teams in the National Football League and look at their longest returns. The Chiefs were the only team in that category, to your point, this accentuates your point, that did not have a return over 55 yards. Everybody's got a 70, an 80, a 67, or 58. The Chiefs' longest punt return last year, chuck it, was 37 yards. So even though Hav was very, very consistent, there wasn't that explosion play to either give you direct points on a punt return for a touchdown or field position that leads to points, either a 3 or a 7.
Well, and if you have an explosive offense, which the Chiefs did not have last year, Javier Arenas and his consistency is a good thing. Because what we know in Javier, he isn't a guy who's going to break the 60-yard run. That's not him. But he's probably going to shed 2 or 3 tacklers. When those receivers come down as gunners, they're going to fall off him, and he's going to go ahead and get 12 yards. And in a field position game, that's valuable. However, you and I both know how the big play in special teams can change not only a game, but I would argue a season. Think of Dante Hall and the magical years the Chiefs would have offensively when he was doing what he does. The McCluster's 94-yarder, the longest punt return in franchise history. That's a Monday Night Football, a season opener. That almost seemed like it just electrified that entire 2010 season in that play. It was part of the Chiefs' hot start. Those big plays, the most exciting play in football, and now kick return's been kind of taken out of the game with the amount of touchbacks that are coming into it. Punt return is now the most exciting play in all of football.
No question. And let's be honest, it can go one way or the other. That punt return set the tone for 2010. Dex's fumbled kickoff set the tone for 2011 to open the season against the Buffalo Bills. So to your point, agreed. And it starts with that first week against Atlanta in the regular season. Even though Wiley is small, he's a small dude, let's be honest. He still, though, with that kind of speed, can even be a gunner candidate. It'd be something in the preseason to watch him, because if he can get by those, the gunner-type guy, if he flies down the field and can get by them, all of a sudden it does create better coverage opportunities in the punt coverage game.
Wiley, one of the best returnmen in the country last season, and prospects coming out. It'll be interesting to see how not only he fares in the battle for a slot receiver position and some snaps in this offense, but also where he fits with Arenas and McCluster in the battle for return jobs. Just more competition coming to this roster. Let's get into day 2 now, Mitch. It was a night, Friday night, and there was a storm pummeling down Kansas City. Big rain. In fact, we had the operations staff here. They were discussing about 40 minutes before the Chiefs pick. There was a big storm cell heading into the Truman Sports Complex area. It was about 20 minutes from here. They were debating whether or not taking the draft room, which is on the 2nd floor of our building, and moving it down to the first floor for safety in the foundation. I mean, the storm was that strong that was coming in. They ended up keeping the draft room intact, but when the Chiefs were on the clock, pouring down rain, lightning, thunder, crackles of thunder. But as soon, this is true story.
I was sitting right there by. I knew where they were coming.
As soon as Donald Stevenson's name is read, the biggest thunder just goes out. And so we get Stevenson on the phone, the left tackle out of Oklahoma, who was in Blue Springs at the time. He's a local guy. And we're like, well, what was louder, man? Was it the thunder? Did you hear that? Or was it your house? Like, well, I didn't hear the thunder because my house was so loud. And so it was a big celebration in Blue Springs. What was louder, the thunder or the celebration in his house?
So what are you saying? The Lord liked or disliked this pick?
I'm saying that the amount of excitement in his house in Blue Springs of going to his hometown team rivaled the sound of that storm that came in here through Kansas City. It's always great to see a guy return home. He grew up a Chiefs fan, said he feels like he's at home. That's just what the Chiefs feel to him, has a love for this franchise. It's good to see that story, but it's also good to see the Chiefs get a guy that could possibly be groomed into a left tackle of the future.
No question. He becomes that candidate, that swing tackle that you and I have also talked about for the last 3 weeks. So just check him off like you're going down the grocery aisle at Hy-Vee. Okay, there, boom, you got that. We watched him at his pro day here at Oklahoma. He was kind of a late bloomer going into that role, but he does have left tackle skills if you look at him as far as, being able to open his hips and drop his feet, and he's got some power. But he also has the ability to play both the right side and the left side. I'm intrigued with him. He's going to be somebody to really watch closely during the summer, but mostly when you get into pads in St. Joe and you go the O-line, D-line drill. You know, I always talk about this too. It's one of the best drills to watch at camp. You get them right up close. If they keep it at the same spot, they have those bleachers right there, and you get to watch it. But I'm very intrigued to see this guy with this power. He's got power in the run blocking game, but to see footwork and what kind of upside and potential he's got, because obviously this franchise thinks he's got it, good enough to play at Oklahoma for 2 years. So, yeah, Blue Springs product. I'm anxious to see it. And that would have been real interesting if they would have moved the draft room. Because I said it's like the Situation Room at the White House. It'd be like moving the Situation Room at the White House to the basement of the Smithsonian. That's what that would have been like. Because there wasn't nothing.
I could imagine
there wasn't nothing in the.
Oh,
it's crazy.
It would have been
yeah.
a disaster, and I think they would have said, we're not moving down there unless you know that this building's going to start teetering and tottering. Stevenson, one of 17 players to work out in the Chiefs' local pro day. He's actually, of note, the first player to join the team that participated in a local pro day since Scott Pioli got here in 2009. In fact, the Chiefs actually have 2 from this year's local pro day, as they also signed from Grandview undrafted free agent Brandon Kinney out of Nebraska. I'll go back to that local pro day because you and I had to, loose lip sync ships and had to play it coy a little bit here and just talk about the guys there and where they might be. It was clear to me watching that pro day that the Chiefs had extra interest in Donald Stevenson. The reason Stevenson, I feel that way, is kind of the herd of guys are going one way. Stevenson's getting some one-on-one blocking technique with Bignell. I mean, it was like his own personal pro day for certain aspects. We started hearing the rumblings, and Stevenson's talked about it, that, he's getting a little extra one-on-one time with the GM. He's getting a little extra time with the coaching staff here in talking, and that doesn't happen at these local days. Most of the time, the guys come in, they work out, they leave, and Stevenson, it was a little bit more. He got to chat with the staff. He kind of had his own area off to the side. It was interesting watching him go, and you and I talked about it after. We're like, okay, this guy's got to be on the radar after today.
They had their eye on him a long time, and they got kind of an extra free day. I mean, let's be honest, the Chiefs Pro Day is a little bit different than maybe the Houston Texans Pro Day, because all you can invite are college guys in your area or people from a certain range of miles. So the prospects at a Houston or a Dallas are much different than maybe a Kansas City. But they were on Donald Stevenson and did their homework on him a long time ago. That Pro Day just kind of brought everything to the point. And I agree with you. That was almost like Donald's day.
And don't ignore the Pro Day. And another guy gets drafted out of that Pro Day. Drake Dunsmore, your man crush from the Pro Day, goes to Tampa Bay, right? 7th round?
Tampa Bay, 7th round. And they're fired up about him in Tampa because I'd be curious to see what he does. Now, we play them this year, Curious if he'll be on their active roster, but he had a very good pro day here as well.
I was hoping he would actually go undrafted and we'd get a chance to snag him up
So did I.
Get another local pro day. Let's keep on moving to the first pick of the Chiefs' second day, and then kept up with the beef. They were beefing up the offensive line, and they selected Jeff Allen out of the University of Illinois. And what could happen, Mitch, Allen, a lot of people are speculating he'll play left guard and compete for a starting job. If he were to unseat the veteran Ryan Lilja at that spot, you would have an Illini sandwich around center because his teammate, John Asamoah, is the Chiefs' starting right guard. But Jeff Allen can do a number of things for this team. If he doesn't win a starting job, we were just talking before the show, Mitch, he could quite possibly be the Chiefs' primary backup to all four positions except for center. He's that versatile. He plays tackle. He plays guard. I think he has a chance to immediately make an impact for this team in 2012.
Well, first of all, and to your point that his versatility, correct me if I'm wrong, Illinois had kind of an old school system at times where they would play like the strong side, weak side. They didn't always go right or left. Right. And so the tight end side, I mean, there's times he'd go to the tight end side and he'd go to the weak side. But the point is he got reps at left tackle and right tackle. The thing I loved about this the most was Will Shields read this pick. To me, there might be, and I tweeted it, and I put #karma. Just the fact that you hope that this
You're
guy.
so into social media now, man.
I know, man. You know how it is, dog.
You were bringing it up.
I'm trying to catch you on followers. I'm at 10,700. I want to catch him. You're at like 11,000.
I'm about 1,000 ahead of you.
Okay.
You'll catch me if you just say I did. You haven't caught me yet because there was, I don't know, up until about 3 months ago, you never tweeted, but you still had like 5,000 followers.
I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Like every 200 days, Holders would be like, Chiefs. And that was basically the extent of your Twitter. Not anymore.
I need you to follow me. I want to pass, Looney. I'll take you all to lunch. If I can get to 11,500 followers, because you're what, 11,400?
I'm like 11,700. Draft weekend put me up about another 200. You know.
You're going to be hard to catch, brother. But we're working on it. But I did tweet that, and the fact that I found some irony there. He looks like a guard here. Looks like an NFL guard. But skilled has the tackle skill. So it's a little bit like Will Shields. I'm not saying he's Will Shields. Will Shields had tackle skill. If he was a little taller, he was a left tackle. He was a fabulous athlete, way underrated. Should have been the Pro Football Hall of Fame first pick. And when you look at Allen, you see that same kind of skill in the fact that he's got the ability, to pull, maul, and you talk about competition, it's all good with him and Asamoah and Ryan Lilja. And to me, and people say, well, what's this mean for Ryan Lilja? This could be positive for Ryan Lilja. If Ryan Lilja has the chance to be a starter or a backup left or right and get 2 or 3 more years out of his career, because he's great in the locker room, he's great as a leader on this team, he's won a Super Bowl. To me, this isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, even a good thing for Ryan Lilja, in my opinion.
I think so as well. And Ryan Lilja, the unquestioned leader of that offensive line, Eric Winston said that as he was giving his first impression of his new teammates. He said, well, Lilja's our leader. He's won a Super Bowl, and he's our leader in that room. I thought that was interesting, especially coming from the guy who is supposed to be kind of the anchor of the new Chiefs offensive line, complimenting Ryan Lilja.
Very few guys in the locker room could be a U.S. Senator. Ryan Lilja could be a U.S. Senator. Just saying. And
he's as long as we're talking about local guys, you have him and Stevenson, 2 local guys on the Chiefs offensive line. Lilja out of K-State and Shawnee Mission Northwest High School, of course, came to the Chiefs as a rookie free agent. They tried to hide him on the practice squad, released him. The Colts said, no, thank you. We'll claim him off waivers. He got back to the good side eventually. And
turned out okay
for him, I'd say. Blocking for Manning.
Got confetti in his hair and checking for a ring. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Let's go to, actually, one more point on Allen is a lot of people had DeCastro, and we're disappointed when DeCastro did not go in the draft to the Chiefs at 11. And you and I discussed, is 11 too high to draft a guard? And appeared it was when he fell into the 20s and went to Pittsburgh. But the note on Allen is the Chiefs still felt they had a need, not only on the line, but the interior offensive line to add a body if he indeed goes and plays guard, which that's his ideal body fit. He's a little smaller for a tackle at the NFL position. Most pre-draft rankings had Allen as the number 2 rated guard in this year's draft behind DeCastro. So you get your need in Dontari Poe in the first round. You still have that need, and so DeCastro goes 24 and Allen goes 44. So you get him in the very next round. Just of note, as people I know, we're excited about the possibility of DeCastro coming here to Kansas City, which brings us to.
But we're going down the line: bread, milk, eggs, 5-Hour Energy. When you go to the store, we're just going right down our list here. This is just kind of filling in what you and I talked about for a month.
And the shocker was Thursday night, and shocker in the fact of many people had written this guy off because it didn't seem like a Scott Pioli type of pick as far as he had a lot of hype with his combine workout, and the Chiefs aren't super believers in the NFL combine. And it just, you wondered, Scott Pioli talks about the film all the time, and as we found out, he liked what he saw on film, but everything you heard externally from media is, well, the player doesn't match the film. He had all the combine hype. Everyone was cooling down on this guy, and then the Chiefs take down Terry Poe at 11. The number one thing, you want to talk about needs? What's the position since Scott Pioli got here with Todd Haley in 2009, and they had Clancy Pendergast in before Romeo Crennel? One thing was all the same as it is today. They were in a 3-4 defense. They changed the 4-3 to the 3-4. Tamba, you're going to go at outside linebacker. DJ, you're going to be the weak side backer. Oh, wait, actually, we're going to go with DeMario Williams for this year, and you're going to be it in 2010. They started moving things around, and guys were getting out of their positions. And they say the number one thing you need when switching to a 3-4 defense is that nose, a Vince Wilfork, whatever it may be, Haloti Ngata. And the Chiefs have not found a long-term answer. Haven't really even tried to find a long-term answer at that position until this year. And boy, they made a big splash with the guy who is labeled the boom or bust guy of the first round. If he hits, the boom can be very high for this Kansas City Chiefs team.
Well, I'm going to give you a macro answer to this pick and a micro answer to this pick. And the macro answer here, if you're a Chiefs fan, you need to be excited because to me it shows trust. This isn't Scott Pioli's pick. This isn't Romeo Crennel's pick. This is both of their picks. This to me looks like a shoulder-to-shoulder pick with those guys. And of course there was consensus in the draft room on Terry Poe, and they were excited about him prior to him just going crazy at the combine. But when you got that trust between a GM and a coach, that now permeates to bigger issues throughout the entire football franchise. So I think that's where you start from a macro, macro answer to the discussion. Micro-wise, I was interested there wasn't a trade out of this pick because really my prediction was they were going to trade down to maybe 14 or 15, either still get it to Castro or maybe Fletcher Cox who went in the pick right behind him. But Scott Pioli addressed it late on Friday night after the second and third rounds. The trade deal went whack in the first round of this draft. Everybody's got their card or their Monopoly board or whatever they use, It went nuts. If you look at what happened of what Seattle did, because Philadelphia went in microseconds to get Fletcher Cox at the 12th pick, but it wasn't anything what the Chiefs were able to do the year before when they went from 21 to 27, eventually got at 26, and got Justin Houston with the 70th pick in the third round. This is a jump from, they got a 4, a 6, and they flip-flop picks. So the point was, I think the trades become, you didn't get as much value necessarily if you were trading down in the first round. So kind of shame on John Schneider and the Seahawks here. I mean, but the point to be made here is the Chiefs wanted this guy. They wanted Poe all along. But I was just kind of thinking through why wasn't there a trade down, and I think that becomes a big part of the discussion here. But I'm with you. There's nothing more I can say about Dontari Poe than you've already said. Other than that, we may win now the AFC West track meet because we're going to win the discus, the shot, and the javelin because this guy was a freak track guy in high school in Memphis. I'm intrigued to watch him. We can all hope Haloti Ngata here. Now, I'm just going to give you the fan reaction. We saw what it was Thursday night. You and I were both there. Friday morning, they had more time to kind of think about it, study it, look at it. And then as the weekend went on, the fan reaction I got was like, okay, if we're doing this, let's do it. And if he becomes Haloti Ngata, we're having a parade. Yeah. I went to, I saw a fan, I'll just call him the Shark. He knows who he is, and he watches us online all the time. I said, what do you think? He goes, in Romeo we trust, is what he said. I think another thing to hear, not only shoulder to shoulder, Scott and Romeo making this pick, but the fact that Anthony Pleasant gets to coach this guy. I've got a lot of confidence in AP and the way he coaches the defensive linemen and trying to build them up. And I think that there couldn't be a better case here within the franchise because if Dontari Poe is going to become Haloti Ngata, that Anthony Pleasant is the guy trying to get him there.
The thing I like about Dontari Poe that I didn't know before the draft, and it's probably because I try and study these guys, but I'm not watching snap after snap. Number one, the Chiefs after the combine and when Poe skyrocketed and got all the hype, they went back and charted every single one of his snaps, charted every single snap that he took last year at Memphis to make sure that they had They're great. And they had multiple people do this. Every single snap charted, accounted for in a book on Dontari Poe. And they did this to make sure that what they thought before the combine matched what they thought when everyone got excited and saw what he did at the combine. But the thing about Dontari Poe, which I did not think the Chiefs would select a nose tackle in the first round, regardless of who it was, for one reason and one reason only. 50% of the snaps that this team took last year came without a nose tackle on the field. Kelly Gregg, out, right?
Yeah.
You're to the side. Kelly Gregg, 25, 30 snaps a game would be on the high side for him because that 3-4 nose tackle comes out of the game when you go sub-package. Dontari Poe may not be coming off the field in the Chiefs sub-package because at Memphis of what he did, he was playing 5 technique, 3 technique. He played the head up over center at times. He even played in the 9 occasionally outside the tackle and tight end. This is a guy who's showed on film the ability to play in those spots when you get the guys in the 3 kind of over the guard. We saw Alan Bailey do it last year. Glenn Dorsey's moved down and played that from his DN post. That's something that Poe can do. And playing 50 snaps a game at Memphis, he's got obviously the motor to do it. That's the interesting thing to me is he's a special breed of guy who's not just that zero tech. They could possibly see him in the nickel and dime and whatever other roles you have other than your base defense.
I'll confess the same thing. I didn't know he had that many snaps like in that 5 technique role. I think for the Chiefs to be successful as they go into sub-packages, we talk about Romeo being creative. But in your front guys, the less substituting you can do, the better. And we have seen since 2009 as many as 6 guys come off the field, have we not, when the Chiefs go to a sub-package. I mean, it looks like the North Kansas City Firehouse when the bell rings and the Dalmatians on the truck and they're going out. I mean, it's in and out. Let's keep in mind who's in this division. Peyton Manning. He is a quarterback, probably better than anybody I've seen in the league, that tries to deke you in that role. If you got a bunch of guys running on off the field, particularly the big heavy guys, he will get you, show you something, quick snap it, and put you where there's too many guys on the field. So the point here is, if you can get more guys, particularly up front, that don't have to leave the field. So if he can play head up on the center, or if he can slide over and play that under tackle, boy, that is a huge asset, particularly with Manning in the division.
And he can do that because of that rare talent that he has, because of those combine numbers we saw posted. That's where the two kind of match and go hand in hand. It'll be interesting to see exactly where all of these guys fit. Their first time they'll be here will be May 11th, 12th, and 13th. That's rookie minicamp. So obviously stay tuned through KCChiefs.com through that weekend as we'll bring you your first meeting with each one of these guys. You'll have interviews with them and exactly where are they fitting along in this Chiefs roster as the Chiefs move forward. And then they're allowed to stay in this offseason program beginning on Monday, the 14th, if their school is done with finals and they've already school is out of session. So the guys of the 8 plus 15 of the 23 rookies that will be here, plus probably some tryout guys if they end up getting signed, the majority of them will be able to start officially with the Chiefs on the 14th that Monday. So we're just getting to each phase of the offseason here, Mitch, and it's interesting, and I know everyone's kind of chopping at the bit to see these guys for the first time. You haven't met any of them, I haven't met any of them, and they're not going to be in the building until rookie minicamp. The Chiefs don't parade around their rookies like some teams do. They're going to come in here, and they're going to be ready to work, and they're going to be treated just like the guy who was undrafted. No, not one's above the other. They're going to come in, and they're all going to learn together.
Well, first of all, if you're a college on one of those crazy quarter systems and you have your spring session isn't into like June the 23rd, please change that. I'm just kidding.
Ohio State's won.
Yeah, I know.
Great football players, and then they start off late in the
30 days later than everybody else. I'll say this, don't overlook the third day. I'm going to end the way I started this discussion. We get so fired up about the first day. Everybody's all juiced up, and then, okay, tell me what else happens. The third day of this draft might very well be a day that we'll remember a long, long time.
We'll see. Keep checking us out on Chiefs Live each and every week here on KCChiefs.com.
Together, we are music. Hearts beating to the same drum. We are many, but we are one. Brothers of the Sun.
The concert event of the year. Brothers of the Sun Tour. Superstars Kenny Chesney, Tim McGraw. With Grace Potter and the Nocturnals and Jake Owen. Tickets are on sale now. Presented by Corona Light.
So I'll just sit right here and have another beer in Mexico. It's summertime. Sweet summertime.
The new Chiefs team store is located on the Founders Plaza on the north side of the new Arrowhead Stadium. Open on game days and from 10 to 6 Monday through Saturday throughout the season, the team store has the largest selection of Chiefs merchandise in the Kansas City area. Featuring official sideline apparel from Reebok, and you can shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at kcchiefs.com.
Adam Kaplan of NFL Sirius Radio is our guest this week on Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers, as we continue to recap the Chiefs 2012 draft class and look forward to what these players might bring and what might be in store for the Chiefs still in free agency here this offseason. Adam, long weekend. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm very glad the draft is over, though. It was a grueling week, but always fun, Josh, to kind of see what happens. And as I probably made it clear on Twitter over the weekend, it was probably the most exciting draft I could remember. So many surprises, guys going a little higher than I thought, dropping for whatever reason, and so many trades in the first round. That was a big surprise.
Specific to the Chiefs draft, everybody, it seems, has an opinion on Dontari Poe, believed going in to the draft to be one of the biggest boom or even bust prospects out there in the first round. The Chiefs take him 11th overall. Adam, your thoughts on the newest Chief?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Now, see, I was at his combine workout, so I was able to see it, and my mouth dropped watching him move. I mean, you don't find nose tackles who can move like he can. Now, the step up in competition from Memphis to the NFL is going to be big. There's no question about it. And also, he's a guy that you could probably move around a little bit, but he's going to play the nose for the Chiefs, and that's why they drafted him. And if you looked at their defense, going into the draft, you said, what area did they really need to improve on? It was obvious. They needed to improve up front. The nose tackle position was clearly a weakness, and they were 26th first of the run last season, so I totally get the pick. And you talked about trading down. See, the danger of trading down is this. If you trade down and they wanted Poe, you don't know that there's another team that didn't want him, and that's always the danger of trading down. Yeah,
definitely. And you mentioned the ability to play different techniques. I think that's ultimately what sold the Chiefs on Poe. The Chiefs were in their subsets nearly 50% of snaps last season, and that didn't include Kelly Gregg. He'd come off the field, so your nose tackle is really playing 20, 30 snaps a game. They hope that Dontari Poe, from what he did at Memphis, can develop into a three-down player and stay in on those subsets, would obviously make his value a little higher and I think differentiate him from your traditional 3-4 nose tackle.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you look at Poe, just the talent level that he has, really, really strong, and you really like that. So you go in knowing that this position now is solved. You don't have to stick Jarrell Poe in there. You've got that. Now, they could obviously look at DN and free agency and a couple other positions, but that was the one issue for me in free agency, and I was surprised they didn't sign a Abreu Franklin or somebody like that, but now we know why, Josh.
Yeah, definitely. What about the Chiefs as a group? Do you have any opinions? I know people are throwing out their draft grades, and I feel about draft grades just as I feel about mock drafts. They're fun, but they're pretty inaccurate at the time they're written because obviously we won't know this class as a whole till about 3 years from now. But do you have any early feelings on the Chiefs 2012 draft class?
Yeah, it's funny, Josh. I hated doing draft grades. I thought they were a waste of time. And when I was working for Fox Sports, they asked me to do them last year, so I did them. And, one thing I learned is if you're going to do draft grades, you you're projecting what these players will be over the next 3 years because that's all you can do. You don't know how they're going to transfer from the college or to the pro level. So it's a real stretch to give draft grades. What I do is I look at do the teams fill their needs. And when you look at the Chiefs draft, they clearly needed offensive line help. They did that. Pioli addressed that with Jeff Allen and Donald Stevenson. Jeff Allen, to me, is more of a right tackle than left. And one of those two guys, I feel strongly, will be playing guard at the next level. The positional versatility is really big, and we see that when guys, for instance, Stevenson was really a left tackle. I think, talking to people in the league, I think he's probably going to stay over there. And when you look at it, Brandon Albertson, the last year of his rookie contract, so you always have to look ahead as a general manager. I think Pioli did that. And one of my favorite players for the draft won the 4th round, and Devin Wiley, who could be a punt returner or slot receiver. He gives them a different look because Preston, as you know, could play the slot. But maybe the best pick overall as far as value. And I don't know why he dropped this Daquan Menzie from Alabama, who's a press man corner. And you know, the way that they're going to play this year, talking to people around the league who know some of the Chiefs coaches, they're going to press more, and I expect them to be able to do that. Because you've got size and speed with Stanford Route, you've got Brandon Flowers, you've got Arenas, and now, of course, who's another former Alabama corner, you got Menzie. See, that was the one thing, Josh, when they came in the draft. I thought they clearly needed to add one more corner. They did that, and this is a passing league, Josh, so I think you've got to do that. And rounding it out, Bray is a really nice player. You could handle returns, and then also sort of a change of pace back. So they're really deep now running back.
Yeah, Wiley and Menzie are two guys that could see significant playing time, I think, in this first year. You think back to the Chiefs last year, and yes, it was partly due to Jonathan Baldwin's preseason thumb injury, but Steve Breston stayed outside all year, and the guys they were running at the slot included Kerry Colbert, who had been out of football for 2 years coaching at USC. He was the starter in the slot on opening day, and then you had Jeremy Urban, who's also no longer part of the team, and the amount that the Chiefs had used 3 safeties last year and the lack of depth behind Eric Berry and Kendrick Lewis going into the draft, I think, opens an opportunity for Menzie in subsets. So I agree on both of those guys, and being a Texas A&M fan, I was pleased when Cyrus Gray's name was called. You mentioned the trades early in the first round, and that, I think, is part of the new CBA. And you being an NFL guy as a whole, I kind of want to get your thoughts on what do you think this new CBA means for the draft, and maybe even just going forward on things we haven't even seen yet with what's to come.
Yeah, honestly, going in, I thought that inside the top 10 we could see some trades. I didn't see anyone moving from like 9 to 3 or anything like that, but we saw what the Vikings did and the Rams did, and I knew going in the Rams were probably looking to acquire more picks because they're trying to turn things around and just build through the draft. But yeah, the new CBA clearly had some kind of impact. It's hard to say exactly how much, but I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, it's crazy. 6 out of the first 8 picks were traded or moved around. So it was fun. It was a fun first round, and I think the CBA clearly had an impact. And then the other thing is, and I think Scott Pioli talked about this, teams that are picking the teams did not really, if they could, want to go inside the top 10 because the structure of contracts in the new CBA is a little different, and it's more impactful. So you saw the Eagles. Let me give you an example. The Eagles love Fletcher Cox. That was the guy that they wanted at D-tackle. They were going D-tackle in the first round, and that was the guy that they wanted. But they were not going to trade inside the top 10 because of the new rules in the CBA. So they were able to do that. They were able to get Cox, and it was interesting. When the Panthers and Chiefs passed on Cox, the Eagles said, okay, now we're going to go get them. Had that not happened, they were not going to do it. They just were not going to trade into the top 10. So there's clearly good and bad features of the new CBA.
When we talked to you last, we were previewing free agency and some of the Chiefs' needs and some of the best players available. Now we've hit the tail end of free agency as Scott Pioli came over the weekend and said, look, we're not done with free agency. There was a couple positions we wanted to see how they shook in the draft, and we're back on the phones talking with veteran free agents. So I've outlined some of the Chiefs' biggest needs through free agency and was hoping you might have an idea telling our fans some of the best players still available. And I'll start with offensive tackle. And people may be a bit surprised to hear that with the Chiefs because they got Eric Winston and they just drafted 2 guys who played offensive tackle in college. But I think it's still a need for a veteran. Jeff Allen may end up moving inside and competing for time at guard. Donald Stevenson, they like his upside, but Scott Pioli said over the weekend that he's probably the furthest away of those top 2-day picks of being able to play. So obviously he's developing. And the other guy that's there is David Mims, who's a raw prospect that hasn't played a snap. So there is still need behind Brandon Albert and Eric Winston, I believe. Who are some of the tackles still out there that might be able to come in and compete for a roster spot?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they just need one guy who could play either side. And here's my list. Tony Mall, who's the former Packers, bounced around a little bit. He worked out for the Bears last week. Max Starks, formerly of the Steelers, could play either side. The thing with him is you're always concerned about his weight. Kareem McKenzie, who longtime right tackle for the Giants, who actually started as a left tackle for the Jets. I don't know how much gas he has left in the tank, but he would be a right tackle. Stephon Hire, formerly of the Redskins and Raiders, he could play right or left tackle. Tony Hugo could play left tackle. Kirk Chambers, who's a journeyman, could play left or right tackle. And Hire could also play inside at guard. To me, those are the guys. That's it. I mean, when you look at left or right tackle swing guys, those would be the guys.
What about a 3-4-5 tech DN? The Chiefs have Tyson Jackson and Glenn Dorsey. However, Dorsey's in the final year of his contract. It's a big year for Tyson Jackson as he's due some $15 million in 2013. But behind them, there's some young guys, but the Chiefs don't have many proven players in the 5-tech. Tyson Jackson got hurt in 2010, and Sean Smith stepped up and played very well and had to become a starter. I don't know if the Chiefs immediately have a guy who can be a starter at a 5-tech if one of those players does get injured. Are there any 5-tech, 3-4 defensive ends still out there?
Yeah, you know, when you look at 5 techniques, which is a defensive end in a 4-3 scheme, it's 3-4 scheme. It's a real specialized position, and unfortunately, this list is not very good to have. I mean, this is it. I mean, I keep track of this stuff. Aaron Smith would be a great signing. The problem is he's had a ton of injuries, and the indication at 34 years old is that he will retire. So here's how thin the list is. Vonnie Holiday, who's up there in his 30s, mid-30s. I think he's close to being done. Tyler Brayton would be not a bad signing. He could play in a 4-3 or 3-4. And Sean Ellis, who has played almost his entire career in the 3-4 as a 5 technique, played for the Patriots last season. Ellis would be a good signing. You kind of need that guy to do that. And then I also think, although you don't have it on the list, I think outside linebacker, to me, is where you need a veteran. I know Studebaker's done a decent job. It's been a great story. That was getting him from the Eagles. But Sheffield, you just don't know about yet. Gabe Miller's a second-year player you don't know about yet. And remember, the Chiefs only had 29 sacks last year, although they did go with pressures. I think they could add one more guy. I would not have a problem with that at all. You can never have enough pass rushers. The problem is at free agency. I mean, it's real thin. You've got Joey Porter, who's a journeyman. Reggie Torber could play inside or outside. But when I look at my list of outside linebackers for 3-4, there's really no one out there. So they may just have to go with their young player.
Do you have any list on the inside guys? Because a lot of people thought the Chiefs were going to take Luke Kuechly. They end up not taking a linebacker at all. Right now, Brandon Seiler, who's coming off a torn Achilles, would be the backup to both the strong and weak side inside. And behind him, it's mainly guys that are special teams aces, guys like Corey Greenwood. So I think the Chiefs still have a need at inside as well.
Yeah, I agree with you, because Belcher, to me, is a guy that just wasn't good enough. He's got talent, no question about it. He started a lot of games for them, but they needed to bring up the level of competition. So Brandon Seiler is there, and I agree with you. They probably need to bring in one more guy for competition. Now, this list is pretty good. Guys who play in the 3-4 inside, Stephen Cooper, longtime starter for the Chargers. James Sarrier, I mean, guys are very good football players, played inside. Now, he's older, but I don't know if they need such a young guy. It might be just a veteran. Rocky McIntosh, the last couple of years, played in the 3-4 for the Redskins. Just looking through here, that's probably it. The rest of the guys are probably 4-3 guys. Now, Keith Brooking, last couple of years, played in the 3-4. So you can look at him. And Andre Davis has also played in the 3-4. So there are plenty of guys out there. So that's a buyer's market with inside linebackers.
I'll throw one more position at you, Adam, and it's safety. The Chiefs starters were both coming off season surgeries, actually in season for Eric Berry with the knee, and Kendrick Lewis had his shoulder scoped out. Behind them, there's not a whole lot of experience. You have Donald Washington, Daquan Minzy may fit in there, but the Chiefs have let John McGraw go if they don't re-sign him. Sadi Piscatelli has hit free agency, and they also let Rashard Langford go. Those are 3 guys who made starts last season once Berry was out for the year with the torn ACL. Are there any veterans out there that could help at safety?
Yeah, there are a ton of them. O.J. Atogwe, although he's had his injuries. You know, and always remember, safeties can be moved around. They could be split. So I think Atogwe would be a really nice signing for one season. He's had a lot of injuries, and he's 30 years old. Chris Crocker's had a lot of injuries, but he's another smart football player. Jim Leonard, who could return punts at strong safety, he's coming off injury. He's not even ready yet to pass the physical. Nick Collins is out there. He's not going to pass the physical. He's not ready yet. Sean Jones could play free or strong. Bob Sanders could play strong, but everybody knows his injury history. Chris Harris could play either side. He's a good veteran. Here's a name that Pioli's, I'm sure, familiar with. James Ihedeba was a good special teamer and started a lot of games the last couple of years. St. Abdullah, James Butler, Hiram Eugene, Deion Grant, who started some games, a good backup. I mean, there are a ton of names out there. That is another buyer's market position.
Well, it is a DB. You can't have enough DBs in this league, and especially now in the AFC West. Before we let you go, Adam, I'd like to get your thoughts on how you see the AFC West shaking with Peyton Manning here. Does it make the Broncos the immediate favorite to win this thing, or do you think it's still pretty wide open?
I think it certainly helps them, but I think the Broncos have some issues. They did not run the ball well, really consistently well last season. Now, Will Spaghetti was a big surprise, but he had some injuries, and then when he was not at 100%, they just had nobody else, and they did draft Ronnie Hillman in the third round, but he might be more of a change of pace back. So the concern is about the running game. They need to get deeper at wide receiver. Defensively, they're good but not great. I mean, certainly getting Manning helps them, but remember, he didn't even play last season. He is 36. Oakland, to me, has some deficiencies, but I think their offense getting Carson Palmer a full offseason, I think their passing game will be great. But keeping Darren McFadden is going to be an issue. Keeping him healthy, certainly. San Diego has made a ton of moves. They're really going for it. I don't think there's any question about it. But they lost Vincent Jackson. They'll go with a committee at wide receiver. Their pass rush is a problem. Their secondary is a problem. I think that the Chiefs are right there with the Chargers. I think this is a wide-open division. I don't think there's any question about it. I don't think there's a, you know what, you mentioned Denver possibly being the favorite. I don't know if they're the favorite. I think it's a wide-open division right now in the AFC West. Adam
Kaplan of NFL Sirius Radio breaks down all the post-draft scenarios for the Chiefs. Adam, appreciate your time and lots of great stuff. And as always, you've got your pulse on the next step, which is free agency again here in the NFL.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs, and Adam Kaplan of NFL Sirius Radio for joining us on this week's Chiefs Live. Next week, Chiefs Live will come at you at a new date and same time. We are actually going to move the show this off season, and we may readdress it in season to see what works best. But for the rest of this off season to training camp, where we'll do daily shows, we're going to go on Thursday at noon. The reason for the time change is to bring more information to you. A lot of interview opportunities with players during the off-season program here on Tuesdays that conflict with the live show, which doesn't allow us to, it limits our opportunity to bring some of the interviews, the exclusive things that we normally get to you on this show. So we want to make sure we give you the full effect of the off-season program. So starting next week, Thursday at noon for Chiefs Live, and you can keep checking with us on KCChiefs.com. I'll be giving out my Chiefs post-draft needs here in just the next few days. And, of course, we'll cover the off-season program like nobody else. Thanks for everybody for coming out for Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. And we'll see you next week on a Thursday.